You are going to meet people who have no interest. You're going to meet people who feign interest. And you are going to meet people who have issues with church, with Christianity, whatever the case is. Now, last week we talked about, I'm drawing heavily from last week and this week out of a book by Gregory Kukul, which is a phenomenal book. It's called Tactics. But he introduced the Columbo tactic. Anybody remember what that was? Yeah, so he's laying low, unassuming, but he asks questions. So one of the things we have to do in evangelism, when we're sharing the gospel, one of the best ways you can proclaim Christ is to listen and to ask questions, to find out what's happening in that person's life. So what I'm going to do in the coming weeks is I'm going to invite you to read a passage of Scripture, and I want you to see where the Columbo tactic is in use, if at all, how the gospel is presented, by what steps, et cetera, and then let's have a discussion on it. And I'll tell you what passage I'm going to give you at the end of our time together tonight. But I also want to each week bring in some pointed questions that you might encounter. But before we do so, I want to give you some tools on how to ask the questions that will get to the heart of what people are saying and respond to questions they may have. Now, I also invite you, if you have examples where people have asked a question and they have a legitimate issue, how do I answer that? You know, if you're inviting a coworker and you got a good relationship, you've been going to lunch and you say, hey, how would you like to come to church? And they said, well, I'm not going to find myself in a church. And you say, what would you say to that? Let me ask that first of all. So you're at lunch with me, I'm your coworker, and you say, hey, how would you like to, we're doing a lot of great studies at our church. You know, we meet on Sunday mornings. How would you like to come to church with me? And I said, I really wouldn't. I am not interested in going to church. What's your response? I like that. I don't like to ask questions that let them say yes or no. I like to ask, why? If you don't mind me asking, why do you feel that way?
Asking that, one evangelist Paul said the story about the waitress. You know, most people that have a deep passion or upset will tell you why.
Yes.
That passionate about it.
So Dave invites me to church, and I say, I don't want to go. And he says, if you don't mind asking, why is that? And I say, well, I don't understand why God let my child die. If he was truly a loving God, he wouldn't have let that happen, I'm sure. So I have no purpose for God. If he does exist, he can go fly a kite for all I care. Now what do you do? And you say, well, that's not a realistic scenario. I would say you're not a realistic evangelist, because you will absolutely meet scenarios such as this. What do you say?
I'm very sorry for your loss, but can I try to convince you or change your mind?
No. Why would you try to convince me of anything? That's the problem with Christianity. You're always trying to force your stuff down my throat. Where was your God when I needed him? Now you're trying to force him down my throat. No. Pay the bill for lunch.
Sorry for your loss. Do you mind telling me what happened? Can you share your story with me?
Okay, so now we're getting in. I mean, no offense by that. I'm just saying that, you know, we come in. The thing is that if we see people as our evangelism experiment, as our goal, we've already lost, because they are a person. And if you're only looking, if they have the impression that you're only interested and getting them in church so you can get the Harvest Award and look, my friend is here and I care about you and I want to see you get saved. You are a goal. You're not a person, and you've already lost them. But you can open up dialogue. I was not aware of that. What happened? And I won't beleaguer this example, but then we can have discussion on, well, I will definitely be praying for you. I know that that's tough. And listen, I know a lot of folks that have had that happen, and I believe that they have found solutions. And listen, I cannot imagine how you feel. Even if I had lost a child, that child has a different relationship with me than your child with you. So I can't put myself in your shoes. But I do know this, that there is peace and there is help. And it may very much seem that God is that way, but he may actually be your help. So maybe we could talk about this at another time, and be happy to discuss. You're planting seeds. You have to realize that sometimes you can't win an individual without planting some good seeds of God's love, showing them patience, having a discussion with them. In a discussion, you should listen a whole lot more than you speak, right? You should be able to hear their considerations. But also, it may not be a matter of, well, I feel like God let me down and I'm angry. So you invite me to church and I say, well, I'm not going to go to church. I've been to church. It's full of hypocrites. I have no interest in going. All they're interested in is your money. No, they just gossip all the time. Not interested. What's your response?
Church is about developing your relationship with God, not about the people. And every person has sinned, and every person screws up every day. And no matter how long you've been going to church, there are different levels to your walk. It's like going to school. You can't go to kindergarten and know trigonometry. You learn it the longer you walk in it. And so there are people in church who haven't learned it, whether they've been going to church for 20 years or 2 years. They just haven't graduated out of kindergarten yet. And you can't hold God accountable for the actions.
It's a great answer in the church. How do you guys think that answer is going to work if you were on the other side of the table? Why?
Because she's still given the Christian answer.
She's given a Christian answer. What did you say? Why would they take offense to it? She's defending it, and I'm not trying to pick on you. I'm just trying to show you guys. It sounds like you're defending and you're correcting, as opposed to, wow, I'm sorry, what happened?
Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, what happened? Short questions that let them speak. It's going to give you more information. Columbo tactic. You got to remember the Columbo tactic. He didn't come in there and explain the crime scene. He said, what did you see? What did you hear? That's what you're asking. What did you, what do you mean by that? What happened? And let them talk. It's a cliche, but it's true. People want to know how much you care before they care how much you know. So when you talk to them, it's compassionate. Think about how Jesus, think of all of the times, and we're going to have a lot of these examples, a lot of the times when the religious leaders came up and they would say, well, this and this and this about Scripture. And he wouldn't say, well, no. He would say, well, have you read? Well, what about this? What do you mean? What are you asking me? How do you understand the Scripture? He would enter into a dialogue with them. That's got to be a critical factor. All right? Because if the reality is we're already under attack in society. And so it's easy to get on the defensive. But when we do that, really, now it becomes a question of, can I prove you wrong? Let me ask you a question. I don't mean to presume that any of you have ever been wrong before, but I have. If you have ever been wrong and thought you were right, but had somebody very pointedly point out that you were wrong, did you say, oh, thank you so much? What's that? Now you're angry because we don't like to be wrong. That messes with our ego a little bit, right? So even then, are we still winning? We might have won the battle. We didn't win the war, right? Because now I really don't want to listen to you because you pointed out that I was wrong, right? I mean, how many of you run to ask people questions who constantly prove that you're wrong? But now what if that person, when you bring something to them, they say, oh, okay. What do you mean by this? Okay. Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, I like that. But what if it goes this way? What's going to happen if you go that path? I hadn't thought about that. Yeah. Let's give that some thought. Okay. You ever had a boss like that, or a parent like that, or a friend like that, who very kindly showed you the weak link? What did you do the next time you had a project, a paper, a thought, a plan, an idea, and you weren't really sure? You took it to them, didn't you? Because there's wisdom in that. You appreciate their wisdom. You know they care for you. We've lost that in evangelism. We've made evangelism into a battle with Satan, when evangelism is a battle for them. We are on their side. Do they know that when the conversation ends? If they don't feel like that, we've got a problem, don't we? Does that make sense? Now, there's another group that you're going to encounter, and they are the confrontational. And I'm going to give you some keys on how to handle that. So you invite me to church, and I go, I'm not, that's pointless. What's your response? What do you mean by that? Well, it's pointless. There are no absolute truths in the world.
Have you read C.S. Lewis's book? How long to figure it out?
I think it comes down to that knowing, I don't know another way to say it, knowing your opponent and knowing how to, if they're a confrontational person, how to, and no matter what you say, they're going to be confrontational. So if you know it, you have to switch the approach of how you.
Well, typically, if someone's going to be confrontational, they're not going to accept a passive answer to a degree. Now, if they're confrontational out of contest, not out of, I lost my child and my heart's broken, and I'm blaming God. That's a very different, that's a passionate, but, well, there are no absolute truths. I might say, if Brad said that to me, I'm not going to go to church. There are no absolute truths. I might say, well, is that a true statement?
Because you're forcing me to admit, yeah.
Say, so we can agree, right, that there are some truths, right? So what are your feelings on truth? What gives you this idea? So now I can have that dialogue. Sometimes it's good to be able, you have to be able to show the flaw, because some people live by bumper sticker theologies and philosophies. There are no absolute truths. Is that a true statement? And then they go, okay.